I want to discourage the idea that it doesn't take effort, that love doesn't take action, that love doesn't need intention, that love doesn't need working on yourself. I want to discourage that idea because I think the idea that it perpetuates is love is going to find you fully formed, fully thought about, perfect, and you don't have to do anything.
What do you think are the biggest lies that hold people back from finding love and keeping them single? What do you think that is?
Oh, that's such a good question. And there's so many, but one of the ones that stands out to me is one of the biggest lies that we've been told about love is that you'll find it when you're least expecting it. You'll find it when you're not looking. And I don't know anything that you find in the world when you're not looking in that direction. You can't find your keys if you're not looking for them. You can't find your phone if you're not looking for it. You can't find your passport. Like all the things we lose on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, you don't just find it when you least expect it. And I think we apply that to love because there's a romanticism to it. It's kind of like, oh, I want that mystery of like, we just bumped into each other and I wasn't ready and I wasn't prepared and it happened. And by the way, if that happened to you, that's beautiful. Like, that's awesome. I love that for you. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I think that lie keeps people single because it stops people from making effort. Effort working on themselves, effort working on finding the right person, effort on creating love. And I think the reason why that lie keeps people single the most, and I was talking about this with a friend just yesterday, we were talking about the idea of how you don't stop loving when you move in. You don't stop loving when you get married. You don't stop loving when you've been together for 10 years and you're celebrating an anniversary. It takes constant effort. So now we're saying, oh, well, it's not going to take effort to find love, which means we're training ourselves to think it's not going to take effort to stay in love. And I think that's an unhealthy idea.
That's an interesting perspective. And give me some feedback on this because I want to dive into that a little more. I love it. I think it's all about the context of it because when I met Martha, I was like, I don't want a relationship. I was saying to myself, I'm not looking for a relationship. But it didn't mean I wasn't open.
Correct.
Right? I was open to finding the right relationship. And I think it was like when you're ready and clear that you don't want the wrong relationships anymore, and you're working on yourself and you're finding yourself, you're developing yourself, then it's clearer the right person when you see them, right?
Yes.
When you're approaching them, when you're out in the world and taking action, you're going to attract a healthier version of the person you want to be with.
Yeah, and that's also, you bumped into someone, but you built love out of it.
Of course.
So you didn't find love when you weren't looking for it. You found a person, but you still had to build love actively.
100%.
And I think that's what I want to discourage the idea that it doesn't take effort, that love doesn't take action, that love doesn't need intention, that love doesn't need working on yourself. I want to discourage that idea because I think the idea that it perpetuates is love is going to find you fully formed, fully thought about, perfect, and you don't have to do anything.
Right.
And I think when you have that mindset about anything in life, whether it's love, success, happiness, joy, purpose, greatness, there's nothing else in the world that works that way. So why are we going to, and maybe that's unpopular opinion, and maybe everyone in the comment section is going to be really mad at me, but I'm just saying that finding love takes effort, keeping love takes effort. Both of them take effort.
Yeah. And you talk about these 4 stages of preparing for love.
Yeah.
What are the stages? Because I think a lot of people romanticize about you're going to meet someone, you're going to fall in love, and you're just going to know right away.
Yeah.
And it's going to be perfect, and you're going to, go off into the sunset. What are these 4 stages that we should be very mindful and conscious of to set us up for greater relationship success?
Yeah, so I want everyone to visualize that life is like a school of love. Like imagine the world, planet Earth, has been designed in order to help you learn how to love. Approach life in that way. And when you approach life in that way, you realize that there's 4 different classrooms, or there's 4 stages and phases that help you learn different lessons about how to love properly.
Yep.
And so the 4 stages are preparing for love, practicing love, protecting love, and perfecting love. And what I like about this is we usually like to jump from liking someone to loving someone, but these 4 stages give you the most important middle part, which is learning to love someone. And so I like to break things down into steps and stages because it stops it from being this big abstract idea and this fluffy, woo-woo, kooky feeling to actually being like, well, where am I on this journey? What step am I at? What am I gonna have to learn at this stage?
Right.
And I think when you approach it that way, it just gives you more confidence and self-assurance. And the stages were mapped out based on the Vedas. So the Vedas break down these 4 stages and they talk about how we have to learn different lessons at each classroom.
Preparing for love, practicing love, protecting it, and perfecting it.
Correct.
I'm curious, do you think it's harder to learn how to love someone else or how to learn how to love yourself?
Great question. So I believe that if you've gone through, and first of all, I want to say these 4 stages are not like you finish one and then you start the other. They're always integrated. Like you're always going to be in a couple of places. I find that if you're doing the work to learn to love yourself, that process and that skill helps you learn to love someone else. Let me give an example. Like if I'm learning to love myself, it means I have to get to know my dark side. It means I have to get to know my flaws. It means I have to get to know parts of myself that make me feel uncomfortable. Now, if I recognize that I have all of that in me, now when I meet someone else, I'm not surprised when they have it in them because I've already seen it in myself. And I think often if we think, oh, like I'm gonna meet someone and they're not gonna have any issues or they're not gonna have any challenges, it's partly because we haven't necessarily worked through our own. And so I think if your trauma is more visible to you, if your pain and your stress of the past is more visible to you, you're actually better at being compassionate to someone else's because you can see it's something that connects us.
So it's when we're afraid of our darkness or our traumas or pains or, sides of us that we don't enjoy, what happens when we're afraid of it within us or we're afraid of it in others?
When we're afraid of it in us, we're surprised when we see it in someone else because we haven't sat with compassion with ourselves. Because if we're constantly judging ourselves and berating ourselves and hating ourselves for some of the challenges or traumas that we have, maybe some things we did that we're ashamed of or we feel guilt and embarrassment around, now if you haven't worked through that, you're gonna make that person feel guilty and embarrassed for what they've done because you haven't learned the skill of building space, of dealing with yourself, with empathy, with understanding, with compassion. So a really great example is this, that if you've taught yourself how to play a sport, you can now watch someone else play sport and help them become better at it and understand the challenges they have. Whereas if you've never taught yourself how to play that sport, you'd just be looking at someone else going like, why are you holding the racket like that? Or why don't you know that? It's kind of like the guys that saw us.
Play pickleball.
Yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, me and Lewis were, just to give a very relatable example, like me and Lewis were playing pickleball last year quite regularly until I had an injury. And whenever we'd play pickleball like tennis. So we'd be even doing the scores like tennis or ping pong. And we'd be like, just literally smacking the ball here and there. And then this father and son came up to us.
Like semi-pro pickleball players.
Yeah. And they said, we overheard how you were counting and you were wrong. Like, that's not how it works. And they taught us how, but they were so compassionate. They were so understanding. They were so I was really impressed. They were so slow with us. They weren't frustrated by us. Yeah. I think we often get frustrated by other people's flaws because we haven't looked at our own.
Thank you for watching this video. If you want more inspiring clips like this, make sure to click right here to subscribe and click right here to watch that next video that is specific to support you in your life.